930 Turbo stunned the world with its debut in 1974. With its wide-flared fenders, huge well-tailed spoiler, and aggressive stance, the car looked fast standing still on the poster on your wall, but it really came alive on the streets at full boost. The 930 Turbo has been the stuff of dreams becoming reality ever since. It's not the easiest car to drive and get the most out of, but it's an engaging and rewarding challenge. That's why it's the big thing. These are the poster cars on your wall. Now, let's take a closer look at them. Go for a drive. Find out what makes them so special and why they are the big thing. LA is a movie town. It's cinematic, dreamy, bright, colorful, vibrant, and multicultural. Hollywood may get the headlines, but downtown LA is full of architectural and cultural landmarks, best seen at night, lit up when the roads are empty and quiet. Downtown LA is right in the middle of the greatest car culture capital in the world, and it's where I've called home for the past 35 years. With the ocean to the west, desert to the east, and mountains and epic driving roads everywhere, it's a great place to be if you're a car guy. My love affair with Porsche began as a 10-year-old kid when I saw that white Martini Turbo on the stand at the London Earls Court Motor Show back in 1977. I had the poster on my wall, and I even wrote a letter to Porsche saying how I wanted to design cars for them. Believe it or not, they wrote me a letter back with words to the effect of, "Call us when you're older." In more ways than one, my dreams came true. 40 years after I saw it, I got to drive that actual car. And today, I own a 930 Turbo. In fact, a few of them. One of the most important Porsches ever made. And this one. It's the first ever Turbo sold in America. The 930 Turbo is a car with heritage based in engineering and racing. A car whose technology was lifted from one of the craziest race series of all time, Can-Am. Porsche developed and fine-tuned its turbo technology on the racetrack during the 1970-72 Can-Am race series. Turbos use the expelled exhaust gas to power a turbine that forces extra compressed air into the combustion chamber, creating a bigger bang and more power. But that all creates lag, and Porsche struggled with it early on. With a little help from Roger Penske, George Follmer, and Mark Donohue, Porsche's Can-Am 917-10 race cars would make up to 1,100 horsepower, and once they had figured out how to cure issues of throttle response and chronic turbo lag, they won back-to-back championships in 71 and 72. This paved the way for Porsche's entry into Group 4 and 5 racing with a 74 RSR Turbo and the slightly later 934 and 935, which also proved to be dominant on track. But in order to race, 400 turbo-powered street cars would need to be made. Thus, the 930 Turbo was born. The 930 Turbo made its public debut on September the 13th, 1973 at the Frankfurt Auto Show. Based on the 73 RSR race car, the aggressive-looking Turbo was a showstopper and crowd-pleaser with wide flares and a big wing. It would become the fantasy dream car for many. 284 units were made for the first production year in 1975, but America didn't get with the turbo fever until 76. When it arrived on US soil, it was badged as a Turbo Carrera, renamed to help capitalize on the success of the 73 RS Carrera. My silver 76 930 Turbo Carrera is quite a special car. In fact, it's the first US production turbo ever sold. This car is VIN number 15.
Porsche started their VIN numbers at 11. 11, 12, 13, and 14, those 4 prototype cars were press cars and show cars. This one, number 15, the first US production car ever sold. Sold at Bob Smith Porsche in Hollywood, supposedly ordered by the actor Robert Redford, who I don't think ever took delivery of it. But that's Hollywood for you. It's full of folklore stories. What I can tell you is it's never been out of LA.
It's done 112,934 miles, and it's the type of car that's been driven hard but well maintained. Repainted several times in different shades of silver, it's got chips, dings, and lots of patina. But other than being lowered and on wider wheels and tires, along with a Momo steering wheel, it's stock. In fact, my buddy Marty has worked on the car for over 25 years for the prior 2 owners. I bought it 10 years ago when prices were low and few people cared about the 930. The 3-liter engine is aluminum. It has a 70mm crank and 95mm pistons and cylinders. With a low compression ratio of 6.5 to 1, it makes 260 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 254 foot-pound of torque at 4,500 RPM. Interestingly though, the US spec cars were down on power from 260 to 245, along with larger US spec override bumpers, typical of the era. The 0 to 60 mile an hour time of 6 seconds is nothing to brag about. In fact, it was half a second slower than a 73 RS Carrera, no doubt due to tall gears and turbo lag. So in order to drive this thing and maximize its potential, you have to know how to time the boost and select the correct gear for the situation.
This is not necessarily the environment of which the early 3-liter turbo excels at, and by that I mean the gear ratios are super tall. First gear is good for about 55, second gets you to 90, third's about 115, and fourth, well, that's good for the rest. But we don't see those speeds in downtown LA, but that doesn't stop it being a thrilling ride. By modern standards, these cars are not really powerful, but it's all about anticipation of when the boost comes on and modulating. The throttle response is laggy. You know, for me, coming up to a turn like this where you're rolling in third gear, maybe any other car you just blip the throttle to second and go around it. But if you want to make hay in an early 3-liter turbo, you have to do this. Downshift from second to first.
Another Achilles heel of the early turbos are the brakes. Even with these grippy racing compound Hoosier tires, you still have to apply a vast amount of pressure to get any sense of bite from the early non-power assisted brakes. You gotta remember this car's almost 50 years old and it does have its drawbacks.
It's not an agile or nimble car really. It feels sluggish, the throttle response is lazy, the brake pedal has travel, it doesn't stop great, the clutch is heavy, it's easy to modulate, but it's heavy. The gear shifter is spring-loaded and bulky. But these are the things that make you really work to get the most out of the performance. And to me, it's always about the engagement of, you know, the risk versus the reward, or what I should say is the effort put in is given back to you. You know, it's always a challenge, you know, trying to figure out exactly when the boost is going to come on, when you want it to come on. It's anticipating it coming on.
All boost and no brakes, no wonder this thing had the nickname the Widowmaker. Every drive I take around downtown LA at nighttime reminds me of all the great movies that were shot here. Batman, Blade Runner, Gone in 60 Seconds, and Terminator, to name a few. And by the early 80s, the Porsche Turbo became a star in its own right. starring in movies and TV shows such as No Man's Land, Condor Man, and famously Will Smith's 964 Turbo in Bad Boys. The 930 Turbo is a halo car for Porsche, with such luxuries as power windows, sunroof, full leather interior, plush carpet, and a fancy stereo. The competition? Well, that came from the likes of the Ferrari 365 Berlinetta Boxer and the Lamborghini Countach. Both cool cars, but neither did as much for their brand as the 930 Turbo did for Porsche, then and now.
America is Porsche's largest global market. There's probably more Porsches here than anywhere else in the world. And it certainly is the turbo capital of the world. You know, back in the day, rock stars, movie stars, athletes, celebrities, actresses, supermodels, they all wanted the latest, greatest automobile car. You know, LA is a car-centric city. People judge you by what you drive. And if you're driving a turbo, people are probably looking at you thinking that guy's got taste and he's got a need for speed.
The boosted 930 opened the floodgates to a whole world of independent tuners. The likes of Andal, DP, Kramer, Gambala, Stozek, and the legendary Roof had all caught a dose of turbo fever. Kramer beat Porsche to the punch with their 1977 slant nose conversion, and Roof beat Porsche to the hollowed crown of the fastest car in the world with this, the Roof Yellowbird.
Porsche has a lot of iconic cars, the 550 Spider, the 904, 906, 917, 918, 959, all these three-digit numbers. But the big daddy of them all is the 930. When you think of Porsche, this is the iconic Porsche shape. It's not a 904, it's not a 356, it might be a 911, but it's the 930 version of the 911, which is the real icon, the holy grail car, the big thing, the turbo.
This one car altered the history of sports car production forever. It changed everything, and as a testament to its success, every generation of 911 since the 930 of 1975 has had a turbo model at the top of the performance tree. You can't really compare the modern-day turbos to the 930. The modern cars have almost 3 times the horsepower. They do everything technically better. They're faster, quieter, more efficient, more reliable. But they lack the soul of an early car. The early cars may be antiquated by today's standard, but their analog nature gives them a charm unique only to themselves. They're so stimulating and rewarding to drive. The car connects your hands, your brain, your 2 feet, and your eyes to the road. You're involved in everything the car does. But to get the most out of these early turbos, you really have to work hard and think about it. Plan your moves way in advance. Predict when the boost will come on and when to apply the brakes. Usually delayed on the boost and early on the brakes. The modern day turbo sort of does all of that for you. So why does this car matter? And why is the 930 Turbo a big thing? Well, it's a car that can do it all. A car of no compromises, no bad angles. It's inspiring, challenging, often demanding. It's a car that requires a committed driver. A car that changed the sports car landscape forever. It's the car dreams are made of. It's an icon. And a car that made the hair on the back of my 10-year-old neck stand on end and sent me on a lifelong pursuit to build, collect, drive, understand, and obsess over these incredible machines. A car like no other. The 930 Turbo is the big thing. Stay boosted, my friends.